it is going to be a busy month in July. Not busy as far as things to do, busy as far as things to read. Welcome to my channel, In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne, and this is my July TBR, or pile of possibilities. Let's be real, there's no way I'm getting to all of these. I'm going to start with the things that I definitely will be reading in July. I always try to actually read my annual reading challenges, and this year I'm doing 4, including my own. So far I've kept up with all of them, so I want to continue that trend. To begin with, my Reading the Classics challenge, which is reading American classics with various prompts for the semi-quincentennial. The prompt for July was to read a book with red, white, and or blue on the cover, and I posted a short with some suggestions for that, and this was on there as one that I was planning to read, and that is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. The advantage is that it's very short. So it's nice. I do have a couple of shorter books on my list, so that will help get through everything. Anyway, The Old Man and the Sea, I don't believe I have read this. I have read several things by Ernest Hemingway, but it's been a couple of decades. I don't remember anything about them except that I more or less enjoyed them. I know I watched, was it For Whom the Bell Tolls? And I watched a movie. I think there was like a newer one and an older one. Or maybe it was a different one. Might have been a different one. Anyway, see, it's been a while. I don't remember. I need to read more. This is a good year to do that. So I'm going to begin with The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. And I'm actually really looking forward to that one. And then Journey Through Time, which is Alma's reading challenge for the year. Her prompt in July is actually the American Revolution. All of her prompts are related to historical fiction, and that's the idea, to read historical fiction. But I actually did that in June. So for July, I'm going to do her June prompt, which was World War I or World War II. And this book is also on my 50 by 50, which gives me great incentive to read it. And I've been wanting to read it for a long time. And that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And that one, it says, it is 1939, Nazi Germany. The country is holding its breath. Death has never been busier and will become busier still. I am quite possibly the last person on planet Earth to read this book. So I'll let you know what I think, but you probably already read it, so you probably don't care. So then Jeanette's Christian Fiction Bingo. She has 2 prompts for every month. And the first one is set in Scotland, and the second one is cursive font. And I did not have anything that was both of those in one, which I have been trying to do with her challenge this year. But I did find 2 with each of those, and I think I'll be able to get to them because they're easy reads, I think. The first is The British Booksellers by Kristy Cambron, which is not set in Scotland, but it is set in the UK. I would love to read something in Scotland, set in Scotland, actually, because my boys are going to Scotland in a couple weeks, or well, next week, actually, at the time I'm filming this. They're going to Scotland on a missions trip. So I actually would really love to read something in Scotland, but I didn't have any Christian fiction set in Scotland on my shelf, and I'm really trying to read from my shelf. So I may pick up something, I don't know. But definitely going to be reading The British Booksellers for that prompt in Jeanette's reading challenge. And then for the cursive one, I have a book on my Kindle that I picked up for free, I think, a year or 2 ago. And it's called, I think, Not Exactly Mr. Darcy. Now, it's by an author named Griffin. It is Christian fiction, I believe, but it is not to be confused with I think it's called the Silver Teapot series by Carolyn Miller, which has very similar titles. The 2 sets of books, the 2 series, have very similar titles, and it could be easy to get them mixed up. I'm not sure which one was written first, honestly. They both sort of started appearing simultaneously, so great minds think alike, I guess. Anyway, I have that one already on my Kindle. I want to read Carolyn Miller's series as well, and both of them are like contemporary. I think that Kim Griffin's one, I think that hers is somewhat historical. Like, I think they may either have flashbacks to the 1950s, or some of them are set in the 1950s. I don't know, but they're series based on or inspired from Jane Austen's books and their contemporary or sort of historical romances. In the case of Kim Griffin's, hers. I'm going to try it. I think I just got it on free on Kindle, like on a Stuff Your Kindle day or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. So I'm going to give it a try. And that one has a cursive font. So that is that one. And then for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf, the prompt is a book that has a map in it. And so I have Miss Austen by Gill Hornby. Now, I am a little bit nervous about this one because I really do want to read it. And I also want to watch the adaptation that was made recently. But I did not get on at all with Godmersham Park by this author. And I'm not going to go into that now. If I remember, I will link to the video where I ranted a little bit about that. I didn't get on with it at all. So I'm a little bit concerned that I'm not going to like this one, but I want to try because I want to watch the show and everybody has been loving it. So maybe this won't have the same issues the other one had, or maybe I'm just weird and I have issues with things that nobody else has issues with. Yeah, that's probably true. But anyway, it has a map here. And then for my summer school in June, we read How to Read a Book. As I am filming this, I'm still finishing that up. But the idea was in July to read a book and apply the principles that we learned from How to Read a Book. Now, I was thinking at the outset that How to Read a Book would have more insight into reading literary fiction and classics, but it doesn't really. Honestly, it was a little bit of a letdown in that regard. The section on applying the principles that they developed in analytical reading to fiction and classics was minimal and barely skimmed the surface of how to do it. So there's not a lot for applying to fiction from that. But I would like to try my hand at applying at least a skeleton of their framework to a shorter nonfiction work, which is really what they were emphasizing in the book, How to Read a Book. And what better time than now to read some of the foundational documents, essays, booklets, pamphlets, speeches that created our country. I did a whole bunch of research and I found a whole bunch of lists of different ones. And I think that this would be a fantastic idea if anybody wants to apply the principles of How to Read a Book to something smaller, but that might be a little bit more difficult to understand. So this analytical reading process breaks it down. So I'm going to do that, and I'm leaning towards reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which I may have read in high school, at least parts of it or excerpts from it, but I don't remember anything about it, and I want to read it as an adult, and I want to read it for the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, because it was a very influential book. So I am going to be doing that. I think it's around 100 pages or less. I think it's more of an essay than anything, like a long essay. So I am going to do my best to apply the principles of analytical reading to that book and really get a strong grasp of the meaning of it, hopefully. So that's my plan for that one. Those are all my must reads, and that's enough. That's a lot. So that's 4 books here plus Common Sense and not exactly Mr. Darcy, or not quite Mr. Darcy. So I have those 6 that are definites. Now there's a lot going on this July and also this summer. There are a couple of summer events that I am participating in. One is Big Book Summer. So for Big Book Summer, which I forgot to mention in my June TBR, but I did in fact participate, that is to read a book that is more than 400 pages. And I actually read a couple. I read one, I don't know where it is right now, but I read And the Dead Shall Rise, and I don't know how, I think it had like 650 pages or something. So that was one. Technically I didn't start it though in the summer. So the other one is How to Read a Book, which I'm pretty sure also has more than 400 pages. And then in July, thankfully, I don't need to add to my stack. My goal is to read one big book each month of summer. That's typically what I try to do. So I'm going to read The Book Thief by Margaret Zusak, and this one is well over 400 pages as well. It is 550. So that one fits for that. Also, there is Tiffany's Summer Book Bingo, that she always does. And I love that one every summer. It's so fun. And I have quite a few of my books already, these 6 books that will fit in prompts for that. So 500 plus pages, again, Book Thief. And in a series is one of the prompts. So Not Quite Mr. Darcy is the first in a series. So that works for that one. For short story, I'm going to go with Old Man and the Sea. It's, well, the prompt is short story or novella. I feel like that's somewhere in between the two of them. It's not quite a short story, but it's not really a novella either. It's somewhere in between the two, but I think it fits. And then something from my shelves, a book from my shelves, British Booksellers, which is from my shelf. Oh, and then there is a prompt for essay, and I think Common Sense would work for that. So all of those options will fit perfectly with some of the prompts for her book bingo. And then for Passport to Summer, which is Chantel's summer readathon, one of the prompts is water, and The Old Man and the Sea will work great for that. And books is another prompt, so The Book Thief will work for that. So I am knocking out prompts in all of these very well. So I'm satisfied with that. Then there are a couple of July only reading challenges that I am also participating in. Gonna save my favorite for last, okay? Because I think we all know what that is. But a new one, well, it's new to me. I believe that they started it last year. It may have started it before then, but that is Private Eye July by Mysteries and Mayhem and a whole bunch of other co-hosts, which I will link to all of this information for all of these readathons in the description box if you need to find any of it. Anyway, Private Eye July is exactly that. Reading books about private eye detectives. Now, it's not the same as just an amateur sleuth or a true crime or like a police procedural. It's a private eye, so someone who is hired to investigate and stories about their mysteries. So here's the interesting thing. In the book that I read, And the Dead Shall Rise by Steve Oney, which was a true crime, it was basically a journalistic deep dive into a crime that took place in Atlanta, Georgia in 1913. And this journalist was investigating exhaustively everything connected to that case. And one thing that I found very interesting about that case is that a detective, William J. Burns, was hired by the defense to help them come up with evidence because they were struggling to prove that their client was not guilty, even though they were convinced he was not guilty. Like, evidence was, hard to come by. So this William J. Burns was a famous detective of the time. He even knew Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and so there was a connection there. Also, he was a private eye, and he had his own detective agency. He also wrote a couple of detective novels together with a co-writer, Isabel Ostrander, who was a detective writer, although she wrote under a couple of different male pseudonyms at the time. So she and he co-wrote a book, and I was able to find, or I think they wrote several together, but I was able to find one of them on Project Gutenberg, and that is called The Crevice. Now, I don't have super high hopes for it, but I think it probably fits well in the private eye genre of fiction. I think it will be a decent example of that sort of thing. I don't think it's high literature or anything, but I think it will be a fun read, at least I'm hoping, and I'm looking forward to it. So I got that on my Kindle as well. I'm really hoping to get to it. There is also Deck-of-TBR-athon hosted by Chloe and Becca. Again, I will link to them below. And I am excited to join in this for, I think it's the 3rd year in a row. And what I do with this one, it just helps me choose my books as I go through the month from my TBR. So I have my TBR and my pile of possibilities, but what I will read first is out of those things is going to be determined by the cards and the prompts that I pick. Now, it may lead to some books that are outside my TBR and pile of possibilities. We'll see how much I'm willing to stray from this stack, because these are all books that I really do want to read. We'll see. I may have to fudge a little bit, just a little bit. But I'm going to try to do it because it's so fun to use that it gives a little bit, it kind of randomizes from my stack of books that I have. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing that as well. Okay, so now This is the event we wait for all year long, and that is Jane Austen July. And I think everybody is familiar with that readathon. Okay, most people who follow my channel will be familiar with that readathon, and you will understand that I'm very excited about it. So I am going to show you my pile of possibilities. Jane Austen July has the same prompts every year. Ironically, the number one prompt is to read one of Jane Austen's primary 6 novels. And technically, that's like participating in the readathon, and otherwise you're not really participating in it. But shh, don't tell the hosts, because this year I'm not actually reading a Jane Austen novel. I read all of them last year, and I don't need to reread any of them this year. Plus, I have a lot of other books going on in July. So I am going to do some of the other prompts. And those are another book by Jane, not her primary novels, but something else by her, or writing by her, a nonfiction about Austen or the Regency era, a retelling of Austen's novels, or a Regency era historical fiction, a book by a contemporary of Austen. Now this one is one of my favorite prompts in this challenge, but I don't know that I'm going to get to any of them this year, unfortunately. And then there are some adaptation prompts. You can watch a direct adaptation of one of her novels, or an indirect adaptation of like a retelling or something else. And for that, as I mentioned, I'd really love to read Miss Austen. Read and watch Miss Austen. So that one, by the way, is for Jane Austen July, and that fits that perfectly. But let me show you my Austen shelf, and we'll look together at some of my other options for my pile of possibilities. To begin with, I have Love and Freindship, which is some of the juvenilia by Jane Austen, and it has been years since I've read it, so I definitely could do that one. Don't mind my son singing in the background. And then my sister gave me this Emma manga, which I have not picked up yet. She gave it to me a couple years ago, and I'm very curious about it, so that is a definite possibility. Would be a retelling of Austen's work. Just to show you this, I have this. I bought this in London many years ago, and it was used then, and it's also Love and Freindship. So I could read it from this, but it's kind of fragile, so that's why I bought the other copy. All right, then I have some biographies of Jane Austen that I want to read. So Only a Novel, The Double Life of Jane Austen is one of them that I haven't gotten to yet. And then Carol Shields' Jane Austen, A Life. Haven't read either of those. And then there's Praying with Jane, 31 Days Through the Prayers of Jane Austen, and Dear Jane Austen, A Heroine's Guide to Life and Love, that I also want to read. And then, this has been on my TBR so many times, and I haven't read it yet. Plus, I have the next book in the series, so I need to read both of those. That's Austenland by Shannon Hale. And finally, I'm very excited about this. Sarah gave me this for my birthday. Jane Austen, Her Homes and Her Friends by Constance Hill. And I believe Constance's sister provided the illustrations, which there are a lot of in this book. They went through England and visited all the homes where Jane Austen lived. And I believe they spoke to people who knew Austen, and they got to look at primary sources of information about Austen, and so this is about their journeys and what they learned. So kind of biographical and kind of not. So I'm looking forward to that. So that is my July TBR and pile of possibilities. We'll see how much of that I get to. Hopefully those first 6 books that I mentioned definitely get read. Anything beyond that is a bonus, honestly. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments which of these events you are participating in and what is your favorite thing that you're most excited to read in July. And we will chat there. See you next time. Bye.